I have this agreement with them that I would be dishonoring you if I didn't hold you to the same standards as everybody else here. You need to perform in your role. You need to be the right person in the right seat. If I didn't do that, that would actually be unfair to you. I'm not going to be harder on you than I am anybody else. And I'm also not going to be easier on you. You're going to be held to the same standard because what does that do? That gives them dignity.
Strengthen the love, the legacy, and the lifestyle in your family business. This is Fearless Family Business. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fearless Family Business Show. My name is Adam Hill and I am your host, and I'm really excited to share this interview that I did today with Dale Cooper, who is a real rags to riches story. I mean, from his beginning, starting off in a job corp for disadvantaged kids where he met his wife, to building a business that is worth more than $15 million today, and that involves his kids, of which there are 12 of them. So this is a gentleman that is truly building wealth on a lot of different fronts, not just from the finance perspective, but really just from the perspective of an abundant life. He's building an abundance of faith, building an abundance of family, and now he's giving back. He's contributing by becoming a consultant and coach himself to help others to scale up their businesses and scale up their lives as well. Dale's story is incredible, and I really, really enjoyed talking to him, and you'll get a lot of great perspectives about how to raise a very large family. He's got 12 kids, count them, 12 kids, and how he built a business really from scratch to something that is pretty incredible in a really, really cool niche. I mean, much more fun than water slides? I mean, that's what we're talking about here. So let me tell you a little bit about Dale. Dale Cooper is a dedicated tradesman and a family man, happily married with 12 children, and he's always believed in the importance of skilled labor. And after completing a 4-year carpentry program, he launched a boat janitorial business in 1994, which evolved into a fiberglass repair on yachts. And in 2009, Dale pivoted to the water slide industry. I mean, again, how cool is that? Founding Safe Slide Restoration, now a $15 million enterprise. Recently, he established Cooper Composites and Coatings, focusing on wind turbine repairs. And he's passionate about mentoring young men in the trades. And Dale credits his Christian faith as a cornerstone of his identity in both family and business. We talk about a lot of that in this show and go deep on a lot of levels. So I really hope you'll enjoy my interview with Dale Cooper. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fearless Family Business Show. I'm really glad you're here today, and welcome Dale. I'm really excited to talk to you because I have a feeling we're going to have a pretty incredible discussion about family and legacy and a lot of that. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
So I think the one thing I really want to jump into to start off with is, your family. You have a very big family, a large family of 12 kids. And
That's right.
And I kind of want to hear about that dynamic. But before we jump in, I'd love to hear about you, how you got your start, just maybe a little bit about you, where you came from, and how you got into starting Safe Slides and building the businesses that you're building now.
Yeah. Yeah, my start was I started out well, I should say I met my wife in this program called Job Corps. Are you familiar with it at all?
No, I'm not.
You're not? Okay. Well, Job Corps is a government-run program actually for disadvantaged kids. Um, and so that's where I met my wife. Out of high school, I felt like I'd squandered my early academic life, and I knew I needed a trade. And so I landed in Job Corps, kind of coming from, a less than perfect home. That's where I met my wife and dove into the trades and actually went to trade school and became a journeyman carpenter. But I always had a little bit of entrepreneur in me. Wouldn't have called it that back then, but I was always looking to do side jobs and whatnot. And I started doing some side work, actually washing rich guys' yachts. in
Oh
Detroit,
wow.
Michigan. Yeah. And so I just
Did
start
that
it
did
was
that
almost like go ahead.
well, yeah, I'm curious if that, like, just the idea of washing yachts for rich folks, did that give you any kind of was that maybe the 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 fuel that maybe lit the entrepreneurial fire at all, or was it just a job at the time, or how did that feel for you?
It was I didn't expect it, but it was my school. A lot of these guys became my mentors and it almost felt like, when you take care of their yachts, you become like their bartender. You listen to their stories. At least that's how it was for myself, and I was always intrigued with how people made money, and they would give me advice and counsel me, so I really felt like that was an education for me, and it just evolved from, washing their boats to, these are fiberglass boats, to polishing and waxing them, and then I got into doing fiberglass repair on their boats, just trying to up my game, become more specialized, and that's really what segued into what I do today.
Wow. And so you went from a career in helping to keep water out of vessels to keeping the water in the vessels.
That's
I kind
that's
of
right.
I love
That's right, yeah.
that. No, that's really great. And it kind of piqued my interest a little bit, talking about getting your start in Job Corps, meeting your wife there, and talking about that was a program for disadvantaged kids. Did that have an element of how you grew up? You mentioned maybe were you disadvantaged in any ways that how was it growing up for you? And I guess I'm just trying to set the table for how you are as a father now and a husband, and how you show up. So I'd be curious to kind of maybe know that dynamic if you're open to sharing.
Yeah, I actually came from a big family. I was the youngest of 8, but and I would say it was a middle-class family, but my father passed away when I was very young. I was probably about 15. He had passed away of a heart attack, and he had purchased a business himself. He owned a bar in Detroit, and so my mom went from being a stay-at-home mother to running this business, and unfortunately, she got involved with alcohol and became, I guess I'll say a very bad alcoholic. Um, and so that was, how, you know, I landed in Job Corps, and then my wife, her story was she came from a very disadvantaged she was basically homeless before she went there. So yeah, it wasn't a very good upbringing, but I would say this, my wife and I met there, and we had made the decision early on that we weren't going to embrace victimhood, that we were just gonna view life in a different way, and that was actually after an encounter I had with a guy who said to me, he said, "You could be a victim." He said, "You might even deserve or have reasons to be a victim, but I've never seen anybody prosper who who embraced that." And it just was like a trigger to me. And I just started to feel like any voice that tells me that from now on even if it's coming from well-meaning people, is a little bit of an enemy of mine. And so so yeah, when my wife and I went there, I actually, you know, was friends with a lot of people that were way worse off than I was. And so that was even an education for us. That subculture of Job Corps. Now my kids like to leverage it a little bit, and they
Yeah.
they tell their friends, "My parents met in the system," they think that's kinda cool, you know, the joke to them, but so yeah, to answer your question, I think it did affect us.
Hmm.
My wife I would say I have never heard her even complain or, you know, embrace that one bit, and she has a much, I guess, worse story than I did.
Yeah. That gives me, I'll be honest, that gives me chills to hear that, about, the person you ran into said, never seen anyone prosper that really embraced that victim mentality, and just, the mindset issue there of taking something that you could embrace as a disadvantage or a victimhood, and then just live with that for the rest of your life, or adopt a different mindset of trying to make something out of it. And so you and your wife took that. Now, when you started to move through, you worked on yachts, and then you started shifting over to this new business where you're working in Safe Slide, and you built that business. Tell if you can you dive a little deeper into how you made that transition, and what was the impetus to make you want to get into that new business?
Yeah, it was almost a mistake. I didn't target it at all. I was very busy working on boats, and I was satisfied. And somebody just called me and said, "Hey, we have an emergency repair on a water slide, and it's in Las Vegas." That's what they said. And I turned it down. I said I was very busy at the time, and I didn't want to go to Vegas, had no reason to. Had never been there before, but they were persistent. And so I actually made I felt like I was pretty demanding. I shot them a high bid, told them how much money I wanted up front, and I want a car. I felt like actually acted like I was a rock star, all these demands. And they said, "Yeah, that sounds like that's a good deal. Come and do it." And so I took a couple, well, actually, my oldest son and another guy that worked for me, and we went and did the job, and it was hard. We weren't the scope of work, the way they described it was different. It was hot, like 106 degrees. We worked, I don't know, 12-hour days. Um, got the job done, and I looked at those two guys, and we were exhausted. And I said, "That is the last water slide we'll ever do." And and
Famous
then the
last
next
words.
yeah, and then the next year, it just kinda my phone started ringing, and we just realized, "Hey, this is a niche that's people people aren't really servicing." And that's when we came up with the concept, and also there wasn't any standards for the trade. So we got a vision to, kinda standardize the trade for restoring water slides, and that's how it happened. That was in 2009.
That's incredible. And yeah, you're the first person I met that has a business around this. But we were talking offline on, just how many water slides that are out there that we just don't know exist. We never I mean, it seems like it's a big business.
It is, and after I got into it, I realized, you start looking around, right? You're like, "Hey, where did all these water slides come from?" And when I was a kid, we had the neighborhood pool, the
Yeah.
local pool, and I started looking around. They're just not pools anymore. They're little aquatic centers, and they're
Hmm.
everywhere. And that started, you know, probably 20 years earlier, and so it's time. It's time for them to be restored and fixed. And so we find water slides in all different places, in college, universities, even military bases.
Wow.
Um,
Eh,
yeah.
That's incredible. When I was growing up, so growing up a Southern California kid, we didn't have a lot of water slides around us. We didn't have a lot of the rec centers. We had the beach, of course, which was great. But I remember my grandmother, my grandparents' house, they had the water slide, which was the typical, like, walk up a thing of stairs and then just like a regular slide, you go down. And it was like the greatest thing in the world to a 5 or 6 year old. But yeah, I never realized until like leaving the state how prevalent the idea of water slides actually are, where they existed in such a large capacity. So it's a big business that you're taking part in there. So it's pretty incredible. Was your wife a part of that business as well as you were coming into it?
She wasn't. And I talked to other entrepreneurs. A friend of mine told me one time, actually, a wise, almost mentor friend of mine said, "Every marriage has its own rules of engagement." And I was like, that's always stuck with me as I talk to other entrepreneurs, and they talk about, they work with their wives and whatnot. But my wife she was busy, taking care of the kids, and she was always so supportive. I could make decisions, and she was just had this confidence in me, like, "Okay, you got it." And I remember one time, well, the first business that I owned, I just we had finally gotten to a place where we were making decent money. 'Cause we were pretty
Hmm.
impoverished when we first started out. I wonder if I was making $7 an hour, and she was a stay-at-home mom, and we didn't have a car or even a washer or dryer, and so I had worked up to this place where I was a journeyman carpenter, and I was making a good wage, and
Wow.
yet I always had this side work going on, and I came home one day and told her, "Hey, I decided I bought this business. I made a deal with with actually my brother," and I said I was passing him, because we were both working in the same marina doing I was just doing side work, and I said, "Hey, what do you think about me buying your business?" Because I knew he wanted to do
Hmm.
some other things, and we made a deal, right there, and I came home and told her, "Hey, I decided to quit my job and start this business," and she was like, "Okay," and she was good with
Wow.
that, and that I didn't think that was unusual because was always that way, and that was the start of it, but she was involved with doing the books. That's kind of she helped me out in that area. But
Yeah.
really it was she was taking care of the home and I was out there, grinding it. So
Yeah.
that was
Well,
kind of the relationship there.
that's incredible. Yeah. There's this, thing that comes to mind as you're saying that in the term in the that I've heard before of chief emotional officer, right? Like, when you're making those big high stakes decisions, like to buy a business or to, can make or break something, especially when you're in that situation, having a supportive spouse, a husband or a wife that is there to support you 100%, believes in you, and actually is encouraging you is so powerful, to get there. And I wonder if that's a piece of that mindset that came from that background of, not wanting to be a victim but wanting to have that empowerment. Um, do you think she carried that with you and then kind of helped to develop it through that?
Yeah, I think that she really did grow up in a rough home. And so in some ways she didn't have real high standards. I remember her telling me one time that she was she was living with her stepmom, her actual adopted father and stepmother, and her stepmom came from a family that was well off and but was talking about how much how she was upset because they didn't have any money. But my wife, whose name is Cherry, said she looked in the fridge and it was full of food, and she realized, oh, to some people, not having money meant not having $10,000 in the bank. But that wasn't how she grew up. She grew up with like, wondering if they were gonna have a place to stay or any food. And so in some ways, she was living in a way that she had the most stability she's ever had. Um, and she just had confidence in me. And I'm very grateful for that now because I think that I did take her on a roller coaster ride. I wouldn't say I was a very sensitive husband in the early
Mhm.
years. We have those regrets.
Sure.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a growing process, and that's one of the, I think, the beauties of it is just growth through the ages of just growing into who we are and supporting one another. I heard one time one of the guests on my former podcast of Flow Over Fear had said it this way. Barb Betts was her name. She said, "You either grow together or you grow apart." We're always we're always growing together, and that sounds like you guys were growing together.
we had it both. I
Yeah.
would say that we had both of that, different stages, definitely growing together now. But you know, there were times when I feel like we drifted apart. Um, you got to learn. I feel like we were two little kids growing up together. Had to learn some things, some tough lessons along the way. But yeah,
Was there anything in particular that helped you to kind of shift that into growing together from that, that time you were struggling, or was it just an ongoing kind of process?
Well, definitely my faith, our relationship with Christ, our commitment to one another. Her parents had been divorced. I think her mom was divorced like 6 times, and so she was resolved. My wife was very resolved, this is gonna be successful. And I also had that resolution. I know a lot of people, many people probably wouldn't say this in their marriage vows. Maybe they would imply it, but to us, it meant a lot to say, "Hey, divorce is not an option." Like, we felt we had to say that, you know? And I think we went into our marriage, even though we were young, we knew, "Alright, the odds are against us here." And, um, and so, that commitment helped a lot, but then also just Christ. I mean, realizing, "Hey, we're being discipled along the way here." And, I felt like we had kind of an internal counselor along the way, but it didn't mean it didn't come with some hard times, sure.
Sure. Yeah, the human experience is always a challenge, but finding that faith helped you to grow together. Was that faith something you found later on, or was that something that always existed with you?
No, I mean, I committed young, like at 18, and then my wife did right around the time that we met, so she was 19. Um, but yeah, we had some growing to do still. So that was
Sure.
pretty early. That was pretty
Yeah,
early, you know?
yeah. And so I want to kind of talk about the kids now too, because during that time, I'm imagining you're starting to build your family, and it was starting. Did you always plan to have a big family, or was it something that you decided along the way? How did it shape out?
Man, it's crazy. I don't know why. I always knew I'd have a big family, but my one of my sisters showed me a letter that I had written her in high school telling her that I was gonna have 13 kids, and I don't know why you would think that in high school, what high school kid would think that, but I did grow up in a large family neighborhood, and, so we have 12, but we actually feel like we had 13 because he had 1 miscarriage, and so, yeah, that was, I put that on the table early in my relationship with my wife that, "Hey, I wanna have a large family,"
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
she came from a family, she was pretty much an only child, so
Hmm.
but that
And so,
was that was something that we talked about early on.
yeah, and she was on board for that. I mean, yeah,
She
she
was.
was all
I
in.
think she was
Wow.
intrigued with it. Like,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
think she
really?
was.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she was. I mean, you don't know what you're getting into. I didn't know what I was
Right.
getting
Right.
into. But, um but yeah, we were both resolved that we were gonna have a large family.
And so now, looking back, so now at this point, you've got the 12 kids. What are the age ranges you're looking at now on for your kids? Where are they?
It's 11 to 31, and then my 11-year-old, she's Down syndrome, and so she is she's like having a toddler around all the time. She's a lot of
Sure.
fun there. Mhm.
Yeah. And
So
oh, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, so seven girls and five boys.
7 girls, 5 boys. That's a great balance between that. You hear a lot of stories about people who have large families, and it's just like all boys or all girls or something like that. It's nice to hear like that pretty stable balance. But are you so now involvement in the business? How some of your kids are well into adulthood, probably well into their careers. How is that shaping out with regard um, to the business? Did any of them express interest in going into your business? And has that happened? Has that shaped out at all?
In the beginning, I never meant for it to be a family business. I was just trying to support the family. I knew I needed to be involved in a trade, and then, one of the things is, I work with a lot of dangerous chemicals, resins and whatnot. So I just didn't have it in my mind that my children would be involved in the business. Of course, I really expect it to scale as big as it has. And it's probably not until maybe the last 5 years that I thought, "Oh, this could be something for them to get involved in, that it would actually be a good opportunity for them." Because I didn't want to put that pressure on them that, "Oh, this is the family business. You need to carry on, our legacy through the family business." I didn't want any of that pressure to be on them. But as life has unfolded, it just fits. It fits some of them, but not all of them actually. And so, yeah, that's kind of the story there. And
And so how are those kids that are involved? How are they involved now?
well, I'll say this: I did have one, my oldest son, who actually wasn't a good fit, and he wasn't a good fit. Um, he's a strong kid. He's very intelligent, and we reached a point where we just couldn't work together. And I just told him, "Hey, I don't really want to be your boss anymore. I just want to be your dad." You know. And so which is kind of actually was rough. That was a little rough for a time. Kind of coming to grips with that, but full circle. He lives a mile and a half away from me. He's building his own business and actually just I do some consulting, and so I actually work with his business and do some consulting. We probably talk, twice a day now. We're very close, and he's got 3 children. So I've got 6 grandchildren. So that was him, and he was the only one I would have said, "Hey, we need to go. This is a fork in the road here. It doesn't always work." And then but I have, 5 other children that are involved in the business. My second oldest actually works very closely with me, and then, so he's my second oldest son, and my third oldest son works in the business as our field operations manager, and it works out really good. I have 2 other sons that, they're younger, 17 and 15. They'll come out on a job with me here and there. It was very important for me for my sons to know a trade, to learn a trade. Um, and so I would take them to work with me when they're very young, 14, 12. I probably broke some child labor laws, I guess, but it was, to me, it was part of their schooling. We homeschooled
Sure.
them,
Yeah.
and I wanted them because when I was 18, Adam, I just didn't know how to do anything. Um, I didn't know how to do anything. I felt pretty incompetent. I thought that's not going to be the story for these sons. So yeah, I've got one of the things that lessons I've learned is if you can put a layer between you and your kid working in the business, have them report to somebody else, and if I can do that, then I do that. So I can just be their dad and not their boss. And
Yeah. That's a great rule of thumb. And I know I want to kind of talk about how you put those systems in place in a bit, because I know that you are very much a systems guy in your business now, implementing, and you could tell that you have been able to do that. But with your family in particular, looking at how you're bringing your kids in and your philosophy around that. So I'm hearing a lot of like that shift into, our discussion around legacy now. We talked about love, like, how faith is an important aspect to you and how, strengthening that commitment of marriage is an important aspect for you. And now kind of getting into the legacy of how you prepare your kids. Part of that sounds like making sure they learn early on the value of a trade. How do you look at legacy in terms of the business now? Are you looking at it? Um, have you shifted your mindset more towards looking at how family can be involved for the long term, how they may take it over at some point, or how's your mindset shifted on that?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, culture and core values are a big deal. Um, and how we view our team members. We always say we have 2 sets of customers. We have our clients, that we do work for, and then we have our frontline workers, our technicians, and so developing that, but really that's something they need to grow up in, that mentality that we value people, you know? And and so like I said, I didn't really view this as a family business, but it's become a thing that's actually in a lot of ways taught me a lot of lessons. And so now just bringing them into that and being like, "Hey, learn these lessons with me and let's grow together." Um, I've always felt like, "Hey, we spend a lot of time at work. Why can't it why?" My early experiences with, a lot of the organizations I was involved in, and it was life draining, you know? And so why can't we be a part of something that's life-giving? And so one of my sons who had gone to school, gone to college, and gotten his degree, had worked for me early on just to kind of make ends meet. And he left the company and then returned to the company because of the culture. I think that was a big part of it. He just wanted to be part of it. And that made me very happy and proud, that he would see that and that it had become something like that. And so really making them aware of our core values and bringing them up in that, and then also the culture. But now the second layer is, what does it mean to be a leader? You know, what does it mean to lead? And it's something we've been focusing on, reading a lot of books, but it's organic too. It don't unfolds in front of you because if you're part of a scaling business, you could say, "Hey, I mean, I know how to run a business with 10 employees now, but I've never run a business with 50, let alone 100." And so each level, you're learning something a little bit more and you're leveling up. We My leadership team just recently went on a trip to we were going to Los Angeles to look at a job. We were on the same plane, and so of course you have that conversation. What if the plane goes down? What's gonna become of the company? And I just really felt for the first time, hey, the company could go on. We have the next layer of leaders here, and that's not all my children, but it involves some of them.
Yeah. Wow.
If that makes sense.
That's yeah. And what would you attribute that success to? Like the success of, going from really that startup where you were just taking a chance on yourself, right? And how would you attribute that success to scaling to over a $15 million business today? What 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 are the defining characteristics of that?
Well, we had, the first layer was obviously in business is learning your craft and your trade. And then you realize, oh, I don't know how to run a business. You know, I
Yeah.
didn't realize that's a different skill set.
Sure.
And so out of desperation, being part of a business that was scaling up very fast. And at that point in my life, I was actually physically sick. I look back, my blood pressure was very high and my
Mm.
relationships were bad. I was traveling all over the country, neglecting my family. And I actually was in an airport one day and I went into the bookshop and they had a book there called The Advantage by Patrick Lencioni. But the
Oh
caption,
yeah.
you read that? Did you read that?
I've heard of that. I've heard of that one. I haven't read The Advantage, but I've read other Lencioni books. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then you know it. And the caption under the title was Organizational Health Trumps Everything Else in Business. And I was just like, what is that? I have no idea what that is. And I got the book, read it on the airplane, and he introduced me to the idea of core values and what a healthy business looks like. A business with great communication and minimal politics. And I was like shocked that because I started asking myself the question, have I ever been in a healthy organization? You know? And so I took that book and I gave it to um, a good friend of mine who actually was working for my company and he read it. And so we got the vision from there, to develop, core values in a healthy business. But it wasn't until we were passing that book out to another friend at a trade show when he handed us a copy of this book called Traction by Gino Wickman. And I felt like with the book by Patrick Lencioni, where he painted the picture for me, the other book gave us the baby steps to achieve that. And so that was really the catalyst and the transition into starting to read books and learning how to run a business rather than just doing the job and making sure the job got done, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and that led you down a path of so you started self-implementing EOS into your business through, through the principles in traction. And am I kind of following the right timeline there, or was
Yeah,
that the next step?
it was Adam. I actually started to self-implement. It was expensive to hire an implementer, and I thought, I can do this. So we tried, but then I started to do the math, and I realized, man, if I hired an implementer and they just threw me forward 1 year, you know, just 1 year, I think this would pay for itself. And so we hired an implementer and actually it was very beneficial. Actually hired a couple different implementers on another one that I thought would suit us. And so we did that for some time. And then after a while, maybe a year and a half, almost 2 years, I said to my team, we needed some money. We were going to do a project and we needed about $25,000. And that's about what we were paying for an implementer. And so I said to my team, I said, hey, what do you guys think about me going to school and becoming an implementer? And they have the two programs. They have the boot camp and the base camp. And I said, I'll just do the base camp. And they were reluctant. And I was actually, I'm not a dictator, you know. We really did have the Knights of the Round Table thing going on. And so I really felt like I needed their permission. And I convinced them to let me take it. And so the first time I implemented for my team, I literally had two stools in, front of the room because they said, well, we want you to be involved and we want you to be the implementer. So I said, okay, I'm going to put these two stools here. When I'm implementer Dale, I'll sit in this one. And when I'm team member Dale, I'll sit in this one. I never did that, but they did tell me, they said, hey, after I was all done, they said, that was the best session we've ever had. And so I said, okay, I think I might have a knack for this, or at least be able to do it with our company. I thought having an internal implementer inside of our organization was going to really give us the edge that we needed.
Hmm. Yeah, that no, that's it's a really neat level up, like how you evolved that and how you thought through that process of going from like, all right, well, doing the math on self-implementing and realizing that you can make that return by just accelerating the process and hiring an implementer, and then realizing that once you're a few years down the line, you can even, maybe become that implementer yourself within the business and take those tools and level it up even further. So it's a really, really cool lesson on how building those systems can, help you to evolve and change. And it's never, I guess it's never just a straight line process. You're always evolving. And so what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned from that? You kind of had the in the business MBA, so to speak, where you built where you kind of built that knowledge to the point where now you're the expert on the systems, on the business, and building those systems in. What have been the some of the benefits of doing that?
Yeah, I think the benefits have just been really understanding that concept that you just talked about right there, right? So it's learning to get outside of the business and get outside eyes on the business. And that actually transfers just to life, you know? And community is such an essential part of who we are and what we need. And I think people are desperate for it right now. But my my team, my team here at Safe Slide, they've become my friends, but in some ways, my community. But we need those outside eyes, not just stepping outside of our business and looking at it from the outside, but on our lives, on our families, And so that's probably, coming from my background and being somebody that maybe is kind of insecure and wanting to hide, you know, it's just like, hey, just put it on the table. Just put it on the table. I heard this quote recently. We've been reading different books, the four obsessions of an extraordinary executive and how to be a great boss and different books like that. But just honest conflict is better than dishonest unity was the quote. I was like, that nails it. And and just learning to be honest. And you can't be honest without having people looking in and having that type of relationship where you're saying, "Hey, what do you see? You know, what are you seeing?" And reciprocating that back.
Yeah. Man, that quote hits with the honest conflict is better than dishonest unity. That's just wow. That's a big that's a big one. And so how has that and how has that evolution helped you with the family members in your business? In terms of having the kids in the business, has it helped to improve the dynamic of working with family? Has it added additional obstacles? What does that look like for you?
No, now I'm very careful. Um, we had I did have some pain, early on, like I said, with my oldest son. And some of that comes from visionary dad. I just talk, and visionaries can infect people with just talk, and becoming more self-aware about that. But just really driving clarity even in the business relationship. I said that I like to put a layer between myself and my kids, but my second oldest son is actually my executive assistant. And so that's a very close relationship that I was cautious and careful going into with him. And we actually wrote up a document, a father son agreement. And then I even wrote a statement what it's like to work with me, and just putting up little safeguards like, hey, let's check in once in a while how this is going. But it's been sanctifying and therapeutic even to enter into that relationship with my kids where, there's sometimes where the student becomes the teacher, the dynamics of the relationships change, but I'm always dad, and so I think it's good. It's hard sometimes. It's hard because, it's risky, but it's good if we're as long as the conversation keeps going. The conversation keeps going. And honestly, I'll tell you, Adam, I'm actually the type of person that has learned to avoid conflict. So that really was an epiphany to me. Like, no, this is good. Let's put it on the table and be honest. So
Yeah, there's additional. I like the way you put that. That there's additional. Really, there's a risk that we take when working with family, and it's an additional risk that is above and beyond just getting into business. In general, with all of the difficulties there, we choose to have the additional difficulties of family dynamics or put risk in there with the potential rewards of strengthening our love, in the family, the legacy that we're building and the lifestyle that we can get.
yeah, and one other thing is I I have this agreement with them that I would be dishonoring you. It wouldn't be fair to you if I didn't hold you to the same standards as everybody else here. And so we have that agreement that, hey, you need to perform in your role. You need to be the right person in the right seat, as they say in EOS. And you need to perform. And if I didn't do that, that would be that would actually be unfair to you, you know? And so I think that's an important dynamic is I'm not going to be harder on you than I am anybody else, and I'm also not going to be easier on you. You know, you're going to be held to the same standard because what does that do? That gives them dignity, and that's an empowering thing to do, for your kids. And so we communicate that and we all agree to it.
Yeah, that's a powerful thing, and I mean a powerful lesson to learn, and I think a really healing thing to go through too, to be able to have that kind of working dynamic with your family. Not a lot of families are able to master that within their businesses, and it creates that artificial harmony that exists. But
Right.
you've taken it to that level, which is very admirable. And now you're taking it to another level, and you're getting into business, as I understand it, with your son on the consulting level. Wondering if you could talk about that. How are you making that transition into business consulting with your son?
Yeah, after we implemented EOS and for my own business, it just got me curious. I was like, I wonder if I'm just good at this because this is my business. I wonder if I could pull it off. And I had some friends that asked me if I would help them. And so I took on a couple clients and that grew. I actually run a mastermind group now that I've been running for the last 3 years. And and so I'm hitting a ceiling though there. And he he's watching me and I just thought as part of our arrangement, I was like, hey, would you like to give this a shot? And so he's starting to implement and doing well. We're also partnering up and there's a lot of younger entrepreneurs that are just seem lost, and we decided we're going to throw a conference this April, this coming April, middle of April. Um, so it's for young men, and just to really help them find out who they are using personality tests. So it's really three things that we're working on. Like the first part's going to be this is who you are. This is what you're designed to do. We might use culture index or different personality tests for that. Don't think you have to be somebody else, you know. This is what you're designed to do. And then we're going to work on helping them develop their vision. And then some of the tools that we've learned with EOS, how to execute on your vision. And this is the first time we're doing that. But so we've been implementing EOS for different companies, also the mastermind group, and now we're doing this conference. And yeah, he's very, very, I think he's going to do well. I think he's going to do
That's
well with
great.
it.
That's fantastic. So this is something. So it's just a next evolution of that, bringing the talents and the gifts that you've brought to your business out into the world, so that you could help other businesses thrive as well. Is there a name for the conference, or a way that people can learn
Yeah,
about
it's
that?
called it's called No Boys Allowed,
No
the No
boys
Boys
allowed.
Allowed
All right.
conference. And, you know, yeah, we're just thinking the idea behind it is it's time to be men, calling them up to be men and be men of purpose and focus. So yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, if you are listening to this, or you're watching this, you're a young entrepreneur, you're struggling to find that identity, that business identity. Well, look that up. Look up the No Boys Allowed conference, and Dale, if people want to get in touch and learn more about the consulting that you're doing, the conference that you're going to be running in April, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, just reach out to me. You can email me
Mhm.
at Dale@safeslides.com.
Dale at
Absolutely.
safeslides.com. Excellent. And thank you so much for being here. This was an amazing conversation. I'm so grateful that you were willing to come on and share your journey from, from where you came from, to what you've built, this amazing thing that you've built with integrity, that you've built with purpose, and that you've evolved in humility, just the humility that you share that from. I think those are just elements that have made you successful and made your family successful. And I'd love to close on just like, what kind of tips would you have for anybody that's starting a family? I mean, let alone, 12 kids. I have 2 kids and I find that hard enough. But what kind of advice would you have for anybody that's starting a family or wanting a big family?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. Um, I think that a large part of being successful in raising kids is enjoying them, you know? And yeah, maybe that shouldn't need to be said, but I think I watch a lot of dads and it's just like, doesn't seem like they're enjoying their kids. And if you want to be successful, kids are perceptive. They know if you're enjoying them or not. And then the second thing, that I would say is be their parent, you know? And my daughter, like I said, the teacher becomes the student. So my kids, as they get older, they teach us things. And she was telling me something she read that it's very she said it's very dysfunctional for the parents to be emotionally dependent on their kids, you know? And I agree with that. I agree with that. My wife and I, we lean on each other, but we're here to be our kids' parents. And so they need to lean on us. We can enjoy them, interact with them. And then the last thing I would say is you're not done. You're not done raising them after 18. And that came as a surprise to me. I thought, oh, you get your report card and you either pass or fail or whatever when they're 18. And it's just not true. I've got a 30-year-old son. And of course, the dynamics of our relationship has changed. Still, there's a role here that I play in his life. I've I've been, you know, further in life than he has, and there's still things that I can support him in. So those are the three things that come to mind after you ask that question.
That's those are really, really powerful insights too. And I appreciate those as I have, as I continue to raise my kids that are, in the challenging 13 and 17 year time frame. So it's I appreciate that guidance, and selfishly I learn a lot here. So I'm grateful for
Yeah.
it. And I'm grateful for you being here, Dale. I really, really appreciate your time and your energy here, and for sharing your wisdom. And if you're listening to this episode and you want to reach out to Dale, you want to get involved with his consulting or the conference in April with No Boys Allowed, reach out to Dale at safeslides.com. And yeah, if you like this episode, share it with a friend. And Dale, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, my friend.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me, Adam. I
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
it.
you. And yeah, to everybody out there, I appreciate you being here. We will see you next time. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Fearless Family Business Show. If you're enjoying this show, please thumbs up this episode and subscribe wherever that subscribe button is. And you'll get more family business education and insights in your inbox. And if this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend, a colleague, a spouse, your mom, your dad, a second cousin, whomever you think might benefit from hearing this show. And if you're in a family business and you've got a great story to share, contact me, because I would love to see if you'd be a great fit for this show. I'd love to interview you. Or if you're struggling in your family business to find your unique identity or voice, or you need an injection of new life into your family business, I'd also love to hear from you. I'd love to learn more about you, and I'd love to see if I can help. Simply email me at adam@fearlessfamilybusiness.com, and we'll get you connected to the right place. Together, we can elevate the love, the legacy, and the lifestyle we all experience in our family businesses. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.